came to power. And he looked around and said, you know what? There are way too many of these Jewish people here in Egypt. I think we need to do something about them. I declare on this day that all of the Jewish people from now on will have to be slaves to me. To be a slave means you never get to rest, you never get Shabbat, you never get a weekend, you never get time off, you don't get paid for... You never get paid for your work. You never get to spend time with your family or go on vacation or go away. You just have to work all the time. And that's exactly what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh made all of the Jewish people into slaves, and look how hard they had to work. All day and all night, lugging huge, heavy bricks and building pyramids and towers and big buildings for Pharaoh. And then one day, Pharaoh said, even though I made them slaves, the Jewish people, it keeps growing. There keep being more and more and more of them. You know what? A new rule. From now on, all of the Jewish baby boys that are born, they need to be sent away.
What?
That way the Jewish people won't keep growing the way that they are. Well, this was horrible news, and it was right after that happened that a new Jewish baby boy was born, and his name was Moses. And his mother didn't want him to get sent away, so she hid him inside of a basket and put the basket in the Nile River and floated the basket down the river. And Moses' big sister Miriam followed after him to make sure that he stayed safe in that basket. And lo and behold, who should discover Pharaoh in the river floating in that basket? But Pharaoh's daughter, the princess. And she took Moses out of the water and brought him to the palace and raised him there until he became a grown-up. And he left the palace and got married and started a family. And one day he was out taking care of the family sheep. You see the sheep? Moses was a shepherd. He took care of sheep. And he was out taking care of the family sheep when suddenly he turned and he looked, and there was a bush that was burning. This one doesn't look as cool as the one you guys made. I love the one you guys made. And there was a voice speaking to Moses from the bush. Whose voice was it?
God.
God. God spoke to Moses from the burning bush and said, Moses. And he said, yeah. And God said, Moses, I have a special mission for you. And Moses said, yeah. And God said, I need you to go back to Egypt and go and speak to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to let my people go, that they shouldn't be slaves anymore. They need to be free. It's not okay to be slaves. And so Moses agreed to go back, and he packed up his family and took them with him back to Egypt. And Moses and his big brother Aaron went and appeared before Pharaoh in the palace. And they said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh, it's good to see you. Thanks for meeting with us. We're here because God sent us to tell you that it's time for the Jewish people to go free. It's not okay for you to keep them as slaves, working for you day and night, hard labor, and never giving them a rest and never letting them do what they want to do. That's not okay. You need to let them go. And what did Pharaoh say?
No.
That's exactly right. Pharaoh said, no. I will not be letting my precious slaves go. Then there'll be nobody to build all my wonderful buildings. No. And Moses said, well, if you don't let them go, bad stuff is going to happen here in Egypt. God really wants them to be free. And Pharaoh said, okay, I'm not scared of you. Do whatever you need to do. So Moses went outside and he held his staff, his walking stick, out over the water, and the water all turned red. Nobody could drink it. They were all so thirsty. There was no water. And Moses and Aaron went back inside the palace and said to Pharaoh, now, will you let the people go? And Pharaoh said, yes. If you turn the river back to regular water so that we can all drink and not be so thirsty, and then I'll let the people go.
No, he's lying.
And so Moses went outside and he turned the river back to water, and he went back inside and said, okay, now, like you promised, you're going to let the people go. And Pharaoh said, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm not going to let them go
lying.
after all. That's not going to happen. And Moses said, well, then more bad stuff's going to happen to Egypt. And Pharaoh said, whatever. So the next day, frogs came. Millions of frogs. They were everywhere, in your clothes and under your pillow and in your hair and sitting in your soup, and they were disgusting. And Pharaoh said to Moses, please, I can't take the frogs anymore. Just make them go away. I'll do whatever you want. And Moses said, well, okay. And so he made the frogs go away and went back to Pharaoh and said, now you'll let the people go like you said, right? And Pharaoh said,
No.
you know what, on second thought, no, I changed my mind again. I'm not going to let them go.
He's like every
And
time.
this kept happening over and over and over again. Mosquitoes came, and everybody had itchy, nasty mosquito bites, and Pharaoh said, please get rid of them. But when Moses got rid of them, Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And then beetles came, not the good kind like John and Paul and George and Ringo, the bad kind of bugs, nasty, nasty bugs everywhere. And Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And then all the animals got sick, and no animals means no milk, and no animals to pull their carts or horses to ride. And Pharaoh said, oh, you got to make it stop. Please make it stop. I'll let them go. And again, as soon as Moses made it stop, Pharaoh changed his mind again.
You shouldn't listen to Pharaoh when he said stop.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's one of the lessons from this story is it's not good to lie to people. And if you lie a lot, eventually people will stop believing what you have to say, right? At this point in the story, we're all going, why did Moses keep believing him? He's clearly lying every time. And that's a good reminder to us. We shouldn't lie. We don't want to lie, because as soon as people realize that we're lying all the time, they stop listening to us, right? Just like Moses probably should have stopped listening to Pharaoh at this point.
And then, but if Moses doesn't stop it, Pharaoh will still not let them go, so he doesn't stop it.
That's exactly
So
right.
he should stop it, but he. Hey, what happened on this day?
So on this day, all the people got nasty boils and sores and everything on their bodies hurt, but Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And then hail, huge ice, fell from the sky and was breaking everything, but Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And then locusts, these are bugs that eat all the fruits and vegetables that grow outside. And they came and they ate everything. And now there was no food left to eat in Egypt. And Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And then darkness, everywhere dark. Daytime and nighttime, it didn't matter. It was so dark, I couldn't even see you. Nobody could see anything. It was terrifying. And Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. And this went on and on and on until Pharaoh finally said, enough! I'm done with all this. Take the people and go. So Moses and Aaron and their sister Miriam led all of the Jewish people out of Egypt. And look how happy the Jewish people look. They finally get to leave their slavery and be free people. But they had to leave so quickly because they were afraid that Pharaoh was going to change his mind again, right? They had to leave so quickly, they didn't have time to let their bread rise. And so they had to just eat matzah. And that's why we eat matzah at this time of year, to remind ourselves of this story and how fast our ancestors, the Jewish people back then, had to run away.
There's more pages.
There's more pages. We're not done with the story yet. Because as soon as they left, what happened? Pharaoh changed his mind again.
Come down.
And Pharaoh and the entire Egyptian army went chasing after the Jewish people to bring them back and make them slaves again. And now the Jewish people had a real problem because they arrived at the Sea of Reeds, a huge ocean too big to swim across. And in front of them is an ocean they can't go any further. And behind them is Pharaoh and the Egyptian armies coming to take them back to make them slaves again. And so Moses held his staff out over the water again. And the water split in half. It opened right up and left them a path to walk through on dry ground. It was a miracle. And the Jewish people, they walked through on the dry ground, and it was amazing, and they were so happy. And they made it safely to the other side. And when the Egyptian armies tried to chase after them, the water closed back in, and they had to swim back to the Egyptian side. They couldn't chase after the Jewish people anymore. And the Jewish people were finally free, and they held a big party, and they danced, and they celebrated. They all swam back.
Moses.
and everybody celebrated with Moses and Miriam and Aaron, and we still celebrate Passover every single year. And we get together with our families and friends, and we have a special meal called a Seder, and we retell this. That's right, and we retell this story because we have to remind ourselves of how important it is to be free, to be able to do what we want and live as we want and live with the people we want and be able to have free time and weekends and vacations and not to be slaves to other people. And we also remind ourselves that while we are all very lucky and get to be free, there are still people in the world today who are suffering, who aren't totally free, who don't have all of the rights that we have. And we remind ourselves that it's our job to fight for them, just like Moses fought for us, that we have a job to do in this world to help to make sure that everybody gets to be free, that everybody gets treated fairly, that nobody has to be a slave to anybody else, has to be owned by somebody else, has to work all day and all night for no real pay and no time with family and no time to do what they want. That's never okay. And we retell ourselves this story every year to remind ourselves that we have work still to do to make sure that everybody in the world can be free. Yes.
When Pharaoh told the Jewish people to be slaves, they should not listen to him, and they just went away.
You know what? You may be right. You may be right, but sometimes we don't always know to run away. And so and sometimes we don't really have a choice. Right? Sometimes we just have to do, and that was a really bad situation. It's never okay to treat other people like that. Yes?
Some kids have nothing.
It's right. And
some kids
so
have no
what's our
house,
responsibility?
No cars.
That's right. And so we have a special job to do to help make sure they're taken care of and can eat and can drink and can learn and can be with their family. We have a job to do to make sure that they are okay, because we're okay. We're free, thank God. But we have a job to do to make sure that everybody else gets to be too. You're absolutely right. One more.
What? I think Pharaoh doesn't like God anymore.
That's really interesting. We, you know what? We don't exactly know, but we can imagine that Pharaoh might have been pretty upset with how all of this went. We hope that maybe Pharaoh learned something from it about what's okay to do with other people and what's not okay to do to other people. Pharaoh made some bad mistakes. Yes.
I need the book.
You need the book? What are you looking for?